The Wall Street Journal editorial board argues the new report is, quote, more evidence that those who derided the possibility of a man-made Chinese origin were wrong. Republican Congressman Andy Biggs of the great state of Arizona, member of the House Oversight and House Judiciary Committees. Great to have you in focus. What is the immediate response there on the Hill? It wasn't just conservative and Republican voters. Those of you whose very jobs it is to get to the bottom of things, you were shut down.
Yeah, I think the immediate reaction is there's anger and frustration, Harris. I mean, we want to get to the bottom of this. People like you, people like me, we were completely shut down, called conspiracy theorists, and had our reputations tacked and savaged. Doctors, virologists who questioned the orthodoxy also. So there is an intense desire on the part of Republicans here on Capitol Hill, and I hope my Democrats will join us, to get to the bottom of this, because Harris, this is bigger than even the censorship. This is bigger than what caused this. I mean, remember, they were talking, some wet market in China had caused this initially. But it's beyond that, because you have to know what happened. And there is also the potential connection that we as U.S. citizens, through our government, we're helping to fund this type of research in China. So there's a whole lot of things that we've got to get to the bottom of. And people here in Congress on Capitol Hill, we want to get to the bottom of this story.
Well, just touching on that censorship for a moment, since journalists, everybody got caught up in, well, if you're asking those questions, you must be pushing conspiracies. In this country, that's what we do. We're allowed to ask. It's freedom of the press, it's freedom of speech, and I was always curious as to why more in the mainstream media weren't curious enough to be asking the questions too. Were they afraid of the labels? I guess we'll never know. Let's get to what Jonathan Turley says. The whole Wuhan lab leak story is a scandal of media and government censorship. Let's watch together.
This was a concerted effort by many in politics and the media to silence and shun anyone who was suggesting a lab theory behind the release of COVID-19. The result was largely successful. President Biden contributed to this. He said that social media companies had to censor more because they were, quote, killing people, close quote, by not attacking disinformation on COVID. Well, censorship doesn't protect people. It doesn't save lives. It could cost lives.
He lays it on the very feet of the President of the United States. Congressman.
Yeah, I'm with him on that. Don't forget that President Biden was out there putting together with the FBI a disinformation team on this. He was calling for people to be censored. Harris, when you marry big government with big tech censorship, that is just kind of authoritarianism that we have never seen in this country. And it was it just frightened me, and still frightens me, that we actually had an elected president of the United States stand up there and say, we're going to censor anybody who has a heterodox opinion just for expressing that opinion. I mean, you said it best just a second ago. America's free speech, free press allows us to question what's happening, and they tried to prevent that so they could maintain authority and control over the American people, and they prevented us from knowing the truth.
Yeah, look at where we are with China now. I mean, just look at where we are, capitulated and waiting for them to make the next move on a whole host of things, including whether or not they're going to help Russia fight Ukraine. You are currently the co-chair of the Border Security Caucus, and I know you go down to the border in your state and have visited all over. Let's get into it. Another thing that Republicans now, I know from many of you on the Hill, that you're not going to let up on this. President Biden's border crisis. Oversight Chair James Comer reportedly wants interviews with all of the border sector chiefs after the Judiciary Committee heard from just 2 of them earlier this month. The committee also held a hearing last week at the border in Yuma, Arizona. Not a single Democrat showed up. They called it a stunt and claimed they were not properly informed. Well, we have the receipts. Take a look.
Before we adjourn, we want to inform all members about a CODEL our committee will be taking to the border on February 22nd, 23rd, and 24th. To make the minority aware of that.
Urgency should be growing. Sources tell Fox News border encounters have already passed 1 million this fiscal year alone. Now remember, fiscal year starts October 1st. So in 5 months, we have that cooking, far ahead of last year. Republicans want accountability, and I know you're looking at Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas. Let's go straight to the congressman for his take on all of it.
Has Secretary Mayorkas ever lied to you?
Yes.
And what was the substance of that lie?
He committed to, after reviewing the border, both from the ground and the air, to specifically address, quote unquote, 9 of the 11 Yuma gaps.
Congressman, I know you want to see him impeached.
Yes, that's exactly right. Harris, when you look at it, this isn't just maladministration or incompetence. He has willfully and intentionally opened this border and made this country less safe. Whether it's fentanyl, human trafficking, sex trafficking, the increase in crime. In Yuma, we heard about the hospital that has eaten more than $26 million in uncompensated care, and that doesn't include all of the people crossing the border that they treat. That's just the ones that they can't get any money back from the federal government at all. And when you start looking at a community the size of Yuma, 100,000 people in it, and just in Yuma alone, more than 300,000 people illegally entered last year. You begin to understand the magnitude of the erasure of our border caused by Secretary Mayorkas.
Yeah, I mean, that hospital in Yuma, you wonder what their citizens are feeling like. And I know that this is your state and you're hearing from them. 26 million is a lot. They're going to feel that. Your last word. Yeah,
absolutely. And so it's time to hold people accountable, and Secretary Mayorkas is the one who's controlling these policies, but it is the Mexican cartels that are controlling our borders. It's time for accountability, Harris, it really is.
Well, otherwise it starts to look like complicity. I don't think Mayorkas or anybody in the Biden administration is thirsty for that. Good to see you, Congressman. Always great to have you in focus. Thank you.
Thank you, Harris.